All right, so we are recording, and today we'll talk about trade dress and a couple other issues, like kind of fun stuff. Trade dress and trade secrets, which is great. You all have to be worried about trade secrets. But before we begin, Sophia and I were talking about a couple things, and I hear a question. Okay. And it's a great case that I had. This has probably been 4 years ago now. And what happened is I just moved to Idaho, and I used to do a lot more copyright work. And anyway, I'm actually going to pause this, and so now we'll continue on with our trade dress and trade secret lesson. Let me pull this up first. I actually have to tell another story right now. This is story day, but this is a good story, and this fits right in to what we're talking about today. All right, so on your screen, you've got, two different kinds of saltine crackers. All right, so up top, you've got Great Value. This is what the Walmart brand. Down below, you've got Nabisco, the real saltines. Okay, and you're going to realize what a weirdo. Well, you probably already know that I'm a weirdo, but this will cement it in your minds. All right, I grew up, and my family, I think, we were doing our best to survive in a wealthier part of Los Angeles, and part of the sacrifices that we made was that we didn't eat super great. Like food was never that good. Okay, so we would get cheap stuff all the time. I remember once my mom. This is recording, darn it. My mom got. Like we were kind of hippies too, a little bit, like save the earth type of a family, and that's the only reason I drive a Tesla. It has nothing to do with the torque and all that fun stuff, saving the planet. Okay, but my mom was really interested in like healthy organic stuff. I remember she got into this kick where she would like get a mushroom and stick it in this pot, and that water we would drink or something was supposed to be good for us. It was horrible some days. But again, and then one dinner, it was so funny. She had like all of this, it looked like she went out into the forest and just like foraged stuff. So we had like some random root here and some tree bark over here. And anyway, I remember like eating this stuff, like, what is going on? And anyway, my dad looked at me because we like finished. Couldn't even really eat it. It was kind of like chewing on some tree bark. And my dad looks over at me and he's like, we're going to In-N-Out in 5 minutes. Get in the car. And so my mom was not happy about that. Okay, but we also ate like all the generic everything. So saltine crackers, it was always Great Value instead of the good stuff. And so anyway, part of me was like, I can't wait to grow up. I'm going to be a lawyer. And part of the reason that I wanted to be a lawyer was so that I could afford not to eat Great Value garbage. So again, this happened. I got out of law school, but my wife had a very similar upbringing to me. So she loved, not that she loved, but she's cheap. Okay, let me just put it like that. Laura is cheap, and Laura knows that she's not going to sue me for defamation or anything. Laura knows that she's cheap. And so we got married, and we started making money and got jobs at great law firms and all of this. But Laura kept always buying the Great Value stuff, and it drove me nuts. Like, we never fight as a couple unless it's over Great Value garbage. And so anyway, last winter, I actually didn't get sick this year, but last winter, so a year ago, last winter semester, I got sick and I got the flu or something. And so I was going to do this like typical diet of sick people of saltine crackers and Sprite. Okay, so imagine like I'm on the couch laying out and just kind of like sick. I'm out of my mind sick. And so Laura's like, okay, I'll go get you saltines and some soda. And I'm like, thanks, babe. I love you so much. But don't you dare. And by then she knew exactly what I was going to say. She's like, I know, I'm going to get the real saltines and shut your mouth. And anyway, so she walks out the door to go to Walmart. or Brolum's or something. So she's gone, probably Walmart. She's cheap. So she goes to Walmart, and 20, 30 minutes later, she comes back and she takes the grocery bags and she goes straight to the kitchen. And I can hear over there, she's getting a plate out, super nice, right? Like she's taking care of me because I'm sick. And she gets this plate and she lays out the saltines, and then I can hear her pour the soda and she with ice, all this nice stuff. And she comes over and she puts it on a chair in front of the couch for me so I can like eat and not die. It was really wonderful, like very kind. And then she leaves. And so I grab the saltine and I stick it in my mouth and I immediately spit it out all over the place because she bought me that garbage Great Value saltine crackers instead of the real Nabisco stuff. Right. So I'm like,
How do you know? Gosh.
yeah, I know from my childhood of eating that garbage. So like I know this stuff really well. Laura actually didn't believe me. She didn't believe that I could taste the difference. So we did all these taste tests, and then she's like, all right, but you can't tell the difference between 2% and 1% milk. So we did all of that and I lined it up exactly. I'm like, okay, this is Great Value milk. This is Reach Dairy, 2%. And anyway, I lined it up perfectly, and now she knows not to mess with me. So here we are, and I spit it out, and I'm like, Laura, from the depths of my despair, and she comes down, and she knows like what's going on, and she's like, babe, I promise, I got you the real thing. I'll even go bring you the box. And so she runs back into the kitchen, and she brings out the box, and when you're looking at these two boxes right here, like these actually weren't the exact boxes that she used, but she did get the Great Value. She didn't mean to, though. Right. And this is what's key here. And this is the reason I'm telling you this whole stupid story, is because in her mind, she went in and she bought this bottom box, the premium Nabisco saltine crackers. But here's what Great Value did that I think was tricky is, you can see the text that says premium across the front. For the Great Value brand, it said saltine in that same blue lettering across like it still said Great Value up at the top, but then big across the front was saltine and then little crackers or something like that. And so I believe my wife, like I love her and I believe her. And I really think that in her mind, she was getting the good saltine crackers, but she made a mistake because she grabbed the wrong box. All right. Now, could we get them on trademark infringement? Well, no, because like if I go back to it, it didn't say like the trademark is Nabisco, that little red logo up in the corner, and there was no trademark infringement here because all it said was saltine, and saltine isn't the trademark. That's just the description of what it is, and so there wasn't that problem, and it wasn't anything else. It wasn't dilution. Like when you read it, you didn't think, oh, they're trying to take Nabisco. Like it wasn't a Victor's Little Secret issue either. It was this. The box had the same look and feel, and just imagine this top box saying in the same blue font, saltines, and then of course it had the same pictures, right? Like the soup with the saltine crackers in front, just like you see on your screen right now. It had all of that, but it was so close that my wife couldn't tell the difference. And so anyway, just so you know the end of this story, she did go back, get me the real saltine crackers. She's an angel. We love each other. But for a second there, I was like, what are you trying to pull, Laura? And anyway, but we're okay now. And this was an issue of trade dress infringement. And that is why you don't see those boxes anymore. Now, if you go, you'll see the box that's up there right now with the Great Value saltine crackers. So, cool. Let me see if there's any questions.
But the thing is, like, they don't look alike as well. And I think, like, for any reasonable persons other than wife can recognize what's going on if you look carefully. There's no, no premiums. It's like they're entirely different, honestly, to me.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And Saltine, like Jeremiah's latest comment here, a lot of these companies are okay with great value using similar products. Yeah, but they can't cause confusion, and it can't be trademark confusion, and that's what we talked about last week. But it also can't be the look and feel of the product itself or service. If we'll get into that in a second, but right now let's just stick with products. When you grab the box, Nabisco doesn't want you thinking that you're grabbing a Nabisco box when in fact you're buying a great value box. That's a problem for Nabisco's business model. And so that's kind of the main thing that I want you to remember here when it comes to trade dress infringement. And kind of the good another way to look at this is here. I'm gonna have to pull this out real quick. Is to understand it's not just food, it's everything, right? Nike had to deal with the same thing. So Converse was the first. Actually, this is an interesting fact. Converse was the first shoe to sponsor an NBA player. So this was the first shoe deal ever in the NBA was Converse. And so this player would wear Converse shoes. Converse would pay them money because it's marketing for them. And that's how Converse really took off initially, is as a basketball shoe. But then Converse kind of fell out of favor in the 90s, early 2000s. About 10 years ago, they went bankrupt and were bought out by Nike. So Nike now owns Converse. Now, the first thing that Nike does, Nike's kind of like Disney, like don't mess with Nike. This is the biggest shoe company in the world. And so when Nike buys Converse, they immediately started suing everybody. Prime among these is Ralph Lauren. So Ralph Lauren is a fashion company that also makes shoes. And the reason was Ralph Lauren started making a shoe that looked a lot like Converse that you're seeing on your screen right now. Except, again, it wasn't trademarked. Like they didn't have the blue star. But everything else looked the same. Like it was this black or blue, like Converse has different color shoes. But whenever you see somebody walking down the street in a Converse, you know it's a Converse, right? Like this isn't, it's not a hard shoe to make out. When you see it, you're like, yes, that's a Converse, even without seeing the blue star. And that's what other companies started to do when they saw that Converse was like going downhill and probably going bankrupt and didn't have money to sue them. They said, hey, let's make a shoe that looks like Converse. We just won't make it a Converse. Haha. And the key elements here are relatively simple. You've got that white sole across the bottom, the white toe cap, the lace rings, whatever you call those things, the two little rings at the bottom, drainage, whatever those holes are down at the bottom. Like when you see that, you don't even have to see the star. You don't have to see the logo. You know that that's a Converse. And so when Ralph Lauren and 32 other shoemakers started making basically Converses, when Nike bought it, they sued all of them. All of them settled really quickly. Ralph Lauren held out the longest, but they eventually settled as well. This was Nike basically bought Converse for, I don't know, $600 million or something, maybe $1 billion. And then they started suing everybody, made about $1 billion off of suing everybody. And that's how Converse has kind of had a reemergence the last little bit. But a lot of you have probably seen this. Like if you've been to, New York or something, right? Like there's always those people selling handbags that look a lot like the other handbag that everybody wants but can't afford. And so you go to New York or London or, name your big city, Paris, and you go buy the knockoff. Well, that's okay. It's all fun and games until you get sued by the company that owns that look and feel. It has to be a well-known brand. I mean, there's a couple keys here, but But again, and the real key is when people see that product, do they associate it with the company that created it first? And this is interesting because this is trade dress. This isn't trademark. It's not copyright. It's not even a design patent. It's just trade dress. When people see that thing, do they associate it with that company? And if you try to tap into that to take advantage of it, you're going to get sued under the theory of trade dress infringement. So any questions with this so far?
I have a question. So if you do the books, for example, you're like talking about Twilight. So if you do Twilight, someone do a book that looks exactly like Twilight, like the apple or whatever, but change the title, would that still be trade dress or no?
Yeah, that would be trade dress. That's a good example. So yeah, if the cover, well, actually, it would probably be copyright, right? Is it substantially similar? And yeah, do people confuse the two when they see that image and associate it with the? It's actually a mix. So it'd be trade dress as well as copyright. So yeah, that's a really good question.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
So if something is patented, as long as somebody comes up with a design that's similar but not the same, does the same thing, that doesn't play into trade dress, does it? Infringement? Because I was right before I had finished the reading, and then I saw this video and it was like, we tested out the world's worst Roomba, just like a cheap knockoff Roomba vacuum that you can buy. And even though it's not the Roomba brand, how does that work? Does a patent work differently? Can people make similar products than if something is trademarked, I guess, is my question.
Yeah. And I love the question because it's tying in last week's stuff. So if you've got a patent and you want to make something like that, well, Roomba's got the patent for the Roomba, but it doesn't mean you can't come up with another robotic vacuum that goes around the house and does all of that for you. But if you overlap with their technology by 32%, just kidding, I gotcha. If you use any of their patented material, like they may have a patent in there for how to convert electricity into momentum, or like the specific way that they do that. And if you copy that patent, if it looks the same, that's okay under patent law. They only care about what's going on the inside. With the exception of design patents, which I'm keeping out of this class for a reason. Mostly I don't get it, but just kidding. I totally get it. I know everything. But the trade dress, if you make it look like the Roomba and you call it the Ramba or something, like you just change it a little bit, then you could potentially get into, well, that's a trademark issue as well as a trade dress for looking like a Roomba. Like if you go into Walmart to buy one and you grab it off thinking that it's a Roomba, but it's really this fake thing, or not even a fake thing, just a competitor that looks just like it or similar enough, kind of like our saltine issue, then you've got a trade dress issue as well. So it's a great question because there's so much overlap between all of the intellectual property categories that when you sue somebody, it's usually not just for trademark infringement. You're going to sue them for trademark, trade dress, probably trade secrets. Like you throw the kitchen sink when you sue, and the best one will end up sticking usually.
Hey brother, I also got a question.
Yeah.
So then why, if that is true, that like you can then like push for all of like these like different forms of infringement, why does it make sense to do them individually instead of just like lumping them up into like one big category?
You mean like the legal categories? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, that's one of those thanks England things again. We just inherited this from Europe.
Freaking Brits.
And yeah, except for trade secrets. I think we may have like invented trade secrets, which is a good segue into my next slide. Because trade secrets became very important in the US during kind of the post-World War II and which really saw kind of the surge of U.S. power, not just military, but business as well. And businesses saw that they had important information that wasn't really classified as anything else that we've talked about so far. Now, of course, trade secrets have been around forever, but this became a major legal issue just in the last 100 or so years. And kind of the key here is we've talked about this because we've talked about the Koch formula. And so I think you understand this in principle already. The key thing here is that English means something again. A trade secret has to be secret. And you saw this in the reading. If it's on public servers, if it's posted at the entrance to your business, like how to mix Coke or whatever, that's not a secret anymore. Like you're not doing anything to keep that a secret. And here I've got the statutory definition, and there's a couple things I want you to note. This is information including a formula, a pattern, a compilation, a program, a device, a method, a technique, or a process. This is a whole lot of stuff. This could be again, like what is a program or a device? Well, those things could have been patented, but we're going to just keep them secret. We're going to keep them locked up because why? We don't want it to go public after 20 years and then everybody can copy us. So again, it's those things, but it has to derive independent economic value, actual or potential, keep that in mind for in a second from now, from not being generally known. It's valuable that it isn't out there being publicly accessed or whatever. And then, yeah, it's the subject of efforts that are reasonable under the circumstances to maintain its secrecy. That's the secret part. Like you do your best, reasonable standard to keep this secret and keep it out of the hands of other people. And that reasonable standard is going to be important when we get to our cases for Wednesday. But this is a good time for me to like bring up what I kind of introduced last week was, let's say that my mom has a secret clam chowder recipe. All right. So this is a secret clam chowder recipe that's been passed down for generations. And so the question is my mom's clam chowder recipe a trade secret? And what questions do you have to kind of clarify whether or not this is a trade secret? And this could be anybody.
Is like the recipe hidden or protected? So it's not like she just has a recipe like hanging out somewhere where anyone can just grab it and do it, I guess. Yeah. So that's important, right? Like, is she keeping it secret, or is it on the family blog back when families used to have blogs? Yeah, that's going to be super important. Let's say that it is like she only gives it to her favorite children and that's it. And maybe their spouses or something, right? Like I've got it, but my little brother doesn't because he's my little brother. All right. So that's going to be important. Good. Christopher wrote, does she sell it? Right? Is this something that she uses in a business? Right? And why is that important? Or
well, that kind of helps define if it's actually secret or not.
Yeah, and if it's valuable. Now, what if I told you that she's never had a restaurant? This is just something that she prepares for us 2 times a year or something like that. Do you think it could still qualify as a trade secret? Sophia's nodding her head correctly, and that's, yeah, go ahead, Sophia.
No, I just think yes, because just because you don't sell doesn't mean it doesn't lose the secrecy. Like I could have a secret family thing that we keep it between ourselves and not sell it. Like wine, a lot of families used to have like wine secrets or whatnot, but they didn't sell it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And Sophia's going back to this slide where it talks about it has independent economic value, actual or potential, and that's the key. It could be something that isn't monetized yet, but it has the potential to make money down the road. And sure, we could open up the Hales Clam Chowder restaurant in downtown Rexburg, someday, and even though we haven't done it yet, it still could be a trade secret because it has the potential. Now this, some of you are like, well, everything has the potential to be, to have economic value. Yeah, just, yep, you're right. So live with it. Okay.
House.
Yes.
Can you also define it's trade secret if like the family goes to great lengths to protect it? Because like I have a family recipe like that. It's a fudge recipe that's like 200 years old, and my husband doesn't even know the recipe. So like, can that show that it's a trade secret? Because only two people know it.
Yep. Keep it secret. You've got a trade secret.
So Brother Hills, does the economic value portion of it change if like grandma's wishes are that it never be monetized? Like she gave it to you because she knows you're not going to go off and sell it, but she won't give it to your brother because she knows that as soon as he gets the recipe, the Hills Clam Chowder Shop is opening.
Yeah. So good question. Let me just say this. Usually, almost always, a dead person's wishes are not legally binding. Now, there are some exceptions, like maybe grandma's will says something to the effect of, I leave $1 million to Michael Hales. And I have to like, there's so many wills rules that this would violate, but the gist of it's going to be correct. And he gets $100,000 for every year that he doesn't disclose to the public my clam chowder recipe or something. That may work. But if you say something like in your will, like this can never be disclosed, it's kind of like, cool, but you're dead. And so you don't get to like, I mean, are you going to haunt me if I violate that? Like there's not a real legal protection for you, meaning you can put all kinds of weird stuff in your will and it might not be binding on your heirs. They can still do whatever they want because you're dead. So love your kids and your grandkids, and then maybe they'll uphold your wishes in your will or something. But oftentimes you can't, the estate of the dead person can't bring a lawsuit just because people can make their own decisions. Now, yeah, and there's lots of ways around that, but I'm going to teach you that when we get to wills the last week of school. So that'll be actually a really fun and important class. So I'll talk to you about your own wills too. Okay. Yeah, this slide is pretty self-explanatory. I just, but the key here is this bottom one. Can you reverse engineer a trade secret? Like the Coke recipe, like a client list that a business has here in town that you want access to. Could you just create that yourself? Anybody want to take a stab at that? All right, I'll help you out. Yeah, you can reverse engineer this stuff. You may not have the recipe for Coke, but if you came up with something on your own that tastes pretty darn close, run with it. Like that's what Mr. Pip and all that other garbage is. It's just like people doing their best to make it taste like Coke. Now,
that's the secret of great value, right?
Yeah, like I don't know that anybody's really been successful with this, but go ahead and try. You can reverse engineer trade secrets because you didn't steal it from them. You made it up yourself. Okay, so anyway, that's kind of the main thing that I want you to remember about trade secrets is that there's no protection for people just inventing. Whereas with a patent, and you know this, right? Like if you're the second to invent the telephone or a wireless SD card, you just lose because somebody else has the patent and they beat you to it. This slide I give you just as a good way to kind of refresh your memory about all the different types of intellectual property that we've talked about. So this is a good slide to come back to on the exam. And then let's see here, kind of the other thing, how's that not working? The other thing that I want you to keep in mind and just remember is trade secrets are a big deal. So trade secrets is now codified as a federal law, of course, under the Commerce Clause, protecting businesses and interstate commerce and all of that. If you violate trade secret law, you can be prosecuted in the federal courthouse. So if it's here, you're going to get hauled down to Pocatello and get sued there, where you've got federal minimums and all this crazy stuff that you do not want to deal with. And so, yeah, don't mess with it. Now, what is a trade secret? Kind of the most common in real life is a client list. And this is where I've seen some of my clients get in trouble. They're working at, let's just say, a construction company here in East Idaho. And they've got a list of everybody in town that has called the company that they used to work for, asking for renovation work or something. And so when they leave their construction company, they take that list with them and say, hey, I know you contacted my old employer, but I just broke off and I'd be able to help you now. Do you want me to do that work for you? Lots of people think that this is okay, and it's not, because that client list, so long as it was kept secret and met all those other requirements, is a trade secret. And so when you do that, you get sued by your former company, and your new business is going out of business before it even gets going. And so I want you to be very careful with this. Be careful about what you take when you leave. Like your first job, let's say you go work for Goldman Sachs or something. And when you leave, you take kind of, maybe it's their spreadsheets about how to analyze a specific financial issue. And you're like, this is important. I like that. And you start downloading stuff from your employer right before you quit and go start your own business or go work for somebody else. This is a big deal. Do not do that. Anything that is classified or could be classified as a trade secret, you don't touch that stuff. And if there's any question about it, the worst thing you could do is steal it and then go to jail, because this is a criminal issue as well, federal crime. So as well as a civil, so you could get in jail and then you lose all your money too. So be very careful. Your HR department will be able to answer these types of questions, but I've just seen it too much where people just think like, oh, I'm leaving, I'm going to download everything that I have here on the server. Don't do that.
Brother House, quick question. So for the trade dress.
Yeah.
So when I was doing the reading, it seemed like, it has to like match size. Like here it says like size, shape, color combinations, like texture, graphic, and so on. And when you were showing us like the crackers or like the saltine images, it seems that like the Great Value one violated a few of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So because like even like the example that you gave, and you said like they could not like sue them, I guess, but I don't know, it just kind of doesn't make sense. Like, does it has to be like when you violate trade dress, does it has to be like every little point needs to match? Because in this case, if I saw those two together, they look so similar, even they have like almost the same design in a way and colors, that I don't know, for me, I could sue them because they are so similar to the product that I'm selling. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes sense what I'm trying to say.
I'm glad you asked this, because that list doesn't mean that the trade dress infringer has to have all of those. It just means those are the factors that you look at, weigh it out, and be like, would a reasonable person confuse these two? And by the way, my wife is reasonable. We're saying that for the record. This is getting recorded. And so when she looked at it, and I agree. Like I went back and I was like, oh, I could totally see why Laura grabbed the wrong box instead of what she should have. And so again, it doesn't mean that list, it has to match up all of those. Those are just the factors that you look at when making the decision of whether a reasonable person could confuse the two examples of trade dress. So yeah, good. I'm glad you asked that.
So in theory, they could have sued them basically.
Mm. And maybe that's what happened. I think that's why the box changed and it looks a little different now, because now it's like, anyway, maybe they made Great Value a little bigger. Maybe they shrunk down the the same font. Maybe they added, because you saw in the Saltines one, well, the Nabisco one, the legit one, the one that doesn't make me throw up, that had tomato soup on it, whereas the Great Value had like some kind of chunky garbage soup. And so yeah, they'll change enough of that so that a reasonable person could tell the difference now. Yeah, good question.
Okay, can I just do a follow-up? I'm so sorry. What about international? Because the thing is, I know when you, for example, like Nike, owning Converse, and Converse was such a big thing back when I was like, I don't know, 16. So I was like a few years ago, I guess, like 8 years ago. So my question is here, like, because they do so many knockoffs brands out of Converse, like so many.
Yeah.
And back home in Peru, there's still like one brand that they sell it even like in the mall, like you can still find it, and they sell it kind of like in stores like JCPenney or like Target or things like that. And they sell this knockoff brand that is like, when you look at it, and if you don't see the logo, you think it's a Converse. Like you legitimately think it's a Converse. And they make so much money per year. And I'm so intrigued that they haven't gotten in trouble yet,
Yeah, and a lot of that, like I mentioned last week, a lot of that is kind of dealt with treaties between companies. So, and it will to some extent depend on the specific treaty with the specific country, but usually it's just that other countries will respect the U.S.'s copyright, trademarks, etc. But maybe trade dress isn't included on some of these. Which would allow them, but I don't know. Like I don't know about that specific one. It could be that if they're in all the stores, they're on Nike's radar, but they just haven't prioritized suing them yet, or maybe there's some type of license between Nike/Converse and this other shoe company. But yeah, it's a good question. And maybe you should write a brief about it, like research it a little bit more. And well, you guys have one more brief left, I think. So unless you want to do the extra credit one. So yeah, July 4th, you've got another brief due. So anyway, something to think about. That would be good to research.